Hi, I'm Lisa Crampton. Most people know me as Callie. I'm the project leader for the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. We are seeking to improve the status, or what we call recovery in endangered species jargon. We're seeking to improve the status of the populations of 3 endangered species here in the forests of Kauai: the puaiohi, or small Kauai thrush, the akikiki, or Kauai creeper, and the akeke, or Kauai akepa. And the most recent estimate for akikiki is 450 individuals, plus or minus, 50 birds. Very, very critical, and it has experienced these incredible population declines of like 90% over the last 10 years. It seems to be leveling off now, but when you only have those few birds, it's probably leveling off in the few areas left that we can protect, and it's gone elsewhere. That's the other major thing we've observed with them, is a range contraction. You used to be able to see akikiki out on the boardwalks of Kokei. Now you can't find them there anymore. You have to come all the way here into the interior of the Alakai in order to be able to see an akikiki. And akeke, same thing. Akeke has a few more birds in the population, 950, plus or minus 50-ish. Still not a particularly healthy population, and the trends for it seems to be right in the middle of its steepest part of its decline. It's showing a 90% decline over the last 5 years. Really, really dramatic. And again, we can still see them. They're still a little bit more widely distributed. You can occasionally see an akeke out in Kokei, but it's a single pair, a bird, not the 10s and 20s of birds we used to see. We've gone through a number of iterations of projects here. Back in the day, 2003 to 2010, actually, our project only focused on the puaiohi, because at that point it was the only species listed as endangered. And we did a lot of just natural history, basic research, trying to understand what was driving the puaiohi populations. In 2010, the akikiki and the akeke were listed as endangered, and we received some funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to start doing some studies to understand their basic biology. The reason why we're doing this is because we feel like we've got to the point where threats in the wild are so great and menacing these species to such a large extent that we do have some reservations about our ability to do all of the conservation we need to do just in the wild. And we want to make sure that we have an insurance population in captivity to help support and bolster the wild birds. The ultimate goal, of course, is to re-release, so reverse the journey of those birds back into the wild at some point.
And then kind of fall down behind this little line on this one and be caught right there, and then we can just sort of come over, and it usually just takes a few seconds or a minute to get a bird out. We can put it in a little bag, and then we'll do all the fiddling with it to take measurements of all the little kind of like the bill, the legs, different things, to see if there's size differences within individuals, but also put the bands on, take the quick blood sample. It's all usually can be over in about 10 minutes if we're going quickly. That one is out of the way. But one of the other things that we're also doing now is taking RNA samples from the birds that are widespread and on multiple islands, such as the Apapani EEV and the 3 species of amakihi. And those individuals, those species, especially the Apapani and amakihis, are developing seemingly resistance to a degree to the avian malaria, and sort of the causal mechanisms for how that's happening is still unknown. So it could be that they have different genes within their DNA that allow them to have the resistance, but other things, to know which genes those are, you want to see which genes are being expressed more than others. And so the RNA, I think, really allows you to see gene expression, protein production within the bird. So that kind of gives us a different way of looking at how those individuals are doing it. And so the Apapani is widespread on all the islands, probably, by far still the most abundant of all the honey creepers. The amakihi, the Maui and Big Island species, is doing quite well, like very large numbers. The Kauai species is crashing seemingly just like most of the other native birds on Kauai. So this one on Kauai seems to not have perhaps whatever it is that the Big Island ones have, and so I think we'd like to really understand what that is. So if we're taking the samples here, other people are doing it on the Big Island, we'll get a better sense for what that is that's allowing some of them to live.
We suspect that avian malaria in particular, which is related to human malaria, but which we cannot communicate back and forth between the birds and humans, is the primary cause of the decline of the Hawaiian honeycreepers, which represent 6 of the 8 species on Kauai. And so we're now involved in a pilot project with the U.S. Geological Survey to look at a way in which we could control mosquito larvae in streams using basically dunk, which is a widely available natural larvicide based on a bacterium that interrupts the mosquitoes' the egg's ability to develop. So the idea is we'll apply the dunk to the streams, and then we need to monitor the results by both surveying for larvae in the streams and, this is where this comes in, trapping adult mosquitoes. So this is a trap that uses CO2 and human skin lure to attract mosquitoes to it, because that's what mosquitoes are trying to find in the environment, is a blood meal so that they can lay their eggs. And it will suck the mosquitoes into the top, and then down they'll be collected in the bottom where we can collect them. And once we've collected them, we can do a number of things with them, including looking for the presence of malaria.
So we've been working very closely with the Kauai Watershed Alliance, the Hawaii Division of Forestry and Wildlife, and the Nature Conservancy to do landscape scale fencing here on Kauai. To date, we've fenced over 2,000 acres in the Eastern Alakai Wilderness Preserve, and that includes the summit of the island, and this is very important habitat for the forest birds as well as for watershed protection. We're currently in the process of fencing another 1,300 acres, and that will protect the area that has the highest density of forest birds, of endangered forest birds.
Right. I'm just so glad to see that hollyhaha fence going in. I think it's going to be really critical to our efforts to keep back especially the invasive plants that have been marching up the slope, as well as reduce the numbers of ungulates and the kind of damage that we have been seeing. Maybe that will tie into the disease cycle, maybe not. I'm not sure, because it's really not clear to us at this point how much the wallowing that ungulates is doing is contributing to disease, but anything, right? Anything helps. Anytime we can get rid of a few mosquitoes out there, it's got to be helpful, right?
Yeah, and it's really important to maintain the habitat as much as we can.
So in this incredibly rugged environment that we have here in the Alakai, where it is just so difficult to go cross country, these new traps have been immense labor-saving devices for us, permitting us to control rodents, rats and mice on a scale we hadn't previously been able to do. Do these work for cats? They are adopting the idea for cats, but it needs a wider mouth space because cats' head are larger. Plus cats are kind of naturally shy to go up into these dark areas, so they have a few behavioral things to tweak. They could technically also be used for mongoose. So healthy forests are healthy people and healthy planet, and those birds are part of those healthy forests. We are on the edge of the Wainiha Pali at our field camp that we call Mohihi Field Camp. And we're out here today to collect the eggs of an akekee nest. Akekee are one of 3 endangered species that the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project is working on. This species numbers about 1,000 individuals, and we have determined that in order to save the species from some of the threats that it faces out here in the wild, is going to be a tall order, and as an insurance policy, in case we can't accomplish all of our goals in the time available, we wanted to bring some birds into captivity. And the most conservative way of starting a captive population was to collect eggs. So we've been harvesting teeny weeny little eggs from a nest high above me here in the canopy.
Okay. All right. Now get your feet down at the bottom again. All right. Okay, get it vertical. Okay, great.
This is the second collection I've been on. This is the first one where I've actually been the climber pulling the eggs. So once they got us all hooked up, got the ladder set, and the thermos is attached to me, we're ready to go up and pull. Today was a bit challenging. It's a pretty high tree. We actually extended the ladder to the last rung, about 40 feet up, and the weather's pretty windy.
Female's on the nest? Yeah. Female's on the nest, guys.
The nest was also in a small branch. It was moving around quite a bit. So getting up there, you know, it's a little shaky. So you gotta just readjust and take your time and make sure you can safely pull the eggs. So there were various times where I stopped because the wind was too heavy. I needed to readjust and prune some more branches away. But yeah, it's definitely exhilarating and an adrenaline rush. And once you have the eggs and you're good to go lowering your thermos, it's a great feeling of accomplishment.
The worst fear for these species that we're doing the egg collection for, so the akake that I mentioned and the akikiki, which numbers even fewer birds, only 500, is that they will go extinct in the wild in the next 5 to 10 years. It's really hard to say what will happen. We've been seeing very steep nosedives in both those populations, but sometimes endangered species, when they are starting to get very small in number, bottom out and persist in low numbers for a very, very long time. So they could be fine for a little bit longer, but really when you have so few individuals in a population, all it takes is a chance event like another hurricane Iniki to come through, and all of them are gone the next day.
It's the most rewarding feeling in the entire world, and that's why this is what I do with my life. It's my passion, and I live it out every day doing this, and you know, knowing that there's less than 1,000 akake left and we're making the difference to start the captive population right out here doing it, it's incredible. I don't even know if there's exactly words to say it, but it's very, very, very rewarding.
The partners with the San Diego Zoo will take them to an egg house on Kauai, where they'll be put in an incubator that keeps them gently moving the way a mama bird would turn her eggs to make sure that all sides are developing equally, and usually 4 or 5 days later they hatch, and they're kept at the egg house for another 10 days-ish before eventually they're removed to facilities on the Big Island and on Maui that the San Diego Zoo maintains for its program conserving Hawaiian birds.
Our program is called the Hawaii Endangered Bird Conservation Program, and we have a number of different projects, including the Keauhou Bird Conservation Center, Maui Bird Conservation Center, and Alala Reintroduction. So the akikiki is an endangered honey creeper found only on the island of Kauai. And over the past several years, we found in collaboration with our partners that the population on Kauai is in the process of going extinct. You know, the population is dramatically declining and the birds are disappearing from the wild. So now what we're doing here with this project is we are starting a breeding colony, a breeding population. And so it is a big process from starting off with collecting the eggs from the wild. And so our partners, the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project, going deep into the Alakai Wilderness Plateau, and they collect these eggs from the wild nests using a 40-foot tall ladder technique. So in 2015 was the first year when we started this project to bring eggs in from the wild and to hatch these eggs out. It went very well. Today we have 12 akikiki that are 1 year old, and they're not showing signs of breeding yet. I think they're a little bit too young to be breeding, and so hopefully next year they'll start breeding. And so this is a very multifaceted approach to bringing the akikiki back, make sure it doesn't disappear and bringing it back. You know, we're joining forces with our partners and collaborators, and we're playing one small role. You know, it's important to make sure that these birds don't disappear forever, and also to get their numbers back up, which is the role that we're playing. A lot of our partners are doing fantastic work out in the forest with the native plants, restoring the native plants and removing the weeds, and also protecting the birds from introduced predators. We found that ideally we should start a captive population of akikiki with about 60 individuals. So there's a lot of work to be done to bring all these individuals into captivity and to ensure that there's a lot of genetic diversity available to breed them going forward. I think we all have a responsibility as residents, as people who live here in Hawaii, to ensure that these species don't disappear forever. I mean, you know, these species that we're talking about, like akikiki, are an important part of our natural heritage. You know, they're a special part of this place. And so I think, you know, we all feel a responsibility to ensure they're here for generations to come. Personally, I'm optimistic going forward. There's, you know, a lot of people here care about these species, care about our identity. And there's a lot of great work being done, a lot of passionate people involved. So I'm very optimistic that continuing to move forward, there's hope for these species.
No, I think you're good. I think like one of the absolute joys of the job is being able to nest search, which I think is the kind of it's the best kind of bird watching there is. Like birding can be about chasing after different kinds of birds, seeing all the different kinds that there are, making lists, or just enjoying what's out there. But to me, nest searching is really just this trying to understand who this bird is, how it's acting, and therefore where and how it'll be setting its nest. And so we have this large plateau with only about 300 to 500 akikiki left. So that's, you know, half that as many pairs or less. And they're out there and they have these pretty big territories. And so we just have to go in there, start building up a map in your head of all the places you see them, where they're acting, where they're flying together, where you see them only alone, whether they're taking short flights, long flights, kind of just build up this giant library in your head of what's going on, and then use that to infer where the nest is. So a lot of times what we do is we just go out. The akikiki are so lovely. They're kind of, I think, one of the birds that it's so easy to anthropomorphize because the males and females spend all their time together. So they're just always side by side, creeping around on the same branches, making tiny little tip, 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 tip calls to each other. It's incredibly hard to find them because they're just creeping slowly.
The alala. Hawaii's native crow disappeared from our forest more than 20 years ago.
You know, back in the 1990s, there were only about 20 alala left in the entire world. And that's when our programs jumped in together with our partners to start intensively breeding these birds. Today there are 112 adults, which is very exciting for the alala population.
Brought to the brink of extinction by the very same culprits highlighted earlier: loss of traditional habitat, introduced predators, and disease.
So the importance of having alala back in the wild, it's a really, really important species both biologically and culturally. They are the living legacy of endemic corvids of the Hawaiian Islands. Before human contact, there were actually as many as 5 corvid species across the island chain. Alala being an omnivore that's primarily frugivorous, they're important seed dispersers for native fruiting plants. And when alala are present in the forest, they're basically forest builders, and they perpetuate the native fruiting plants through seed dispersion, and they make the forest really thrive. So alala are essentially really important for our watersheds and the resources that we all depend on.
This is the Keauhou Bird Conservation Center on Hawaii Island. Operated by San Diego Zoo Global under contract with the state of Hawaii, it and a similar facility in upcountry Maui represent the beginning for the Alala Project.
Since the 1990s, it's been an intensive process to facilitate the breeding of these birds at our facilities. I mean, alala are extremely intelligent, wild birds, and so we had to do a lot of intensive monitoring and management of this species.
Ask biologist Fern Duval, one of the few people around who have actually seen and heard alala in the wild.
Every species has their own particular role, but the alala, being as large as it is, certainly had a lot to do with maintaining forest structure and being another very intelligent being, such as crows are now found to be, and I have lots of evidence of that for the alala too. It's just like we need to have as many intelligent beings left on Earth as we can manage to have, and they happen to be one of them.
So today there are 112 adults here at our facility on Hawaii Island and over on Maui combined. And we feel that this number is a good, robust number to be able to start releasing the offspring back out into the wild. So we'll be able to use existing birds in these facilities to repopulate the forest of Hawaii Island.
The only other thing I can think of is you could screw it into like a little piece of wood.
Fast forward to the fall of 2016. The state, federal, and nonprofit partners of the Alala Project engage in extensively planned and well-choreographed preparations for releasing alala into the Pu'u Maka'ala Natural Area Reserve on the Big Island.
And we have really great support from the Natural Area Reserve's manager to be conducting this in the reserve. However, because alala have a home range of over 2 square miles, alala can easily disperse onto adjacent lands, such as private lands. So it's a really concerted effort where we have many, many permits in place in case birds disperse onto those adjacent lands. And it also requires frequent communication with those land managers and private landowners.
As well as years of preparation to restore the forest here to as close to its natural state as possible. This means removing invasive plants and trapping predators like mongoose.
And I feel it is kind of our responsibility to protect these species now, and so in 25 or 50 years that generation has a chance to enjoy and see the endemic species of Hawaii. These species that are found nowhere else, they are what makes Hawaii Hawaii.
Weeks before the planned release date, the first 5 alala, or cohort, destined for their natural habitat, are transferred into what's known as a flight aviary. In this large structure, they literally spread their wings, one step toward the transition from captivity to the forest outside.
Alala, each individual alala has their own personality. And, some birds are a little bit bolder, they're a little bit quicker to explore new areas, to fly to new parts of the aviaries, while some birds are a little bit more shy and they take a little bit longer to explore new plants, for example, that are in their aviaries. So it's really interesting to see that there's a lot of variation and differences between these individual birds.
A mile from the flight aviary, final touches are being put to the Hack Tower. This outdoor but enclosed structure is the final stop for the alala before their release. Dozens of people work on the front lines, with hundreds of others behind the scenes cheering them and the birds on.
so much effort, so much passion has been put into restoring and recovering this species. And so now we're at the next step in the recovery of the alala, which is releasing these birds back out into the wild. So I think it's an exciting time, not only for our team here at our facilities, but also for many partners and organizations and really communities as well.
From veterinarians who do health checks on each alala, to technicians building feeders and perches in the forest, to the people who raise the birds from the time they hatch, to project coordinators, this is an exciting time and a chance to be part of an historical effort.
I feel very, very fortunate to have gotten to this point in my career to be a part of such a concerted effort, such a large-scale conservation effort. And I just can't wait for the day that alala are flying free, and to hear them call in the wild is going to be just a highlight of my life, really.
Anyone who works in captive breeding and reintroduction projects knows they are fraught with fits and starts. Such is the case with this first release of the 5 alala. 3 of the birds were found dead within days of their release. The cause of their deaths not known yet. The effort pauses for a time, though the next group of birds is on the ready for their chance at flying free in Hawaii's native forest.
If people only knew what they sounded like and what they call like at night, which is not like their calls during the daytime, they would be truly amazed. And it's absolutely clear to me why the Hawaiians honored them with such a reverence, if you will, because the birds are like no other bird that is out in the Hawaiian forests.